I personally am not against development, but I'm concerned about the scale of the development. The peninsula is now becoming a place where either the very rich or the very poor live. That's what it's turning into.
Finally, now in my lifetime, we're starting to see really a positive growth in the city of Portland. But if we need to foster that and increase that while the economics allow for it, otherwise our next generation won't have the benefit of a renovated and improved city of Portland. You know, the reality is people that are afraid that change is going to lead to worse things just don't see the fact that this change has actually been making Portland better.
People want to develop here because people want to live here. There's money to be made. Unfortunately, what that means is that those of us who live here are going to see a change in the quality of our life. Portland skyline is going to change dramatically.
The money that went into urban renewal in the 60s, in a sense, was just reflecting that attitude at the time. Unfortunately, what it didn't necessarily always realize was that you were ripping up communities, you were ripping up the fabric of cities, you were destroying people's livelihoods and so forth in this quest to make things more modern.
For both the Spring Street and the Franklin Arterial, lots of buildings were demolished. The Jewish, Italian, African-American families had lived in that neighborhood for many years. A whole area of those homes was removed. There were literally thousands of residences that were torn down during that era of urban renewal.
Instead of a vibrant neighborhood with great architecture, houses and businesses and families, it's a sewer for traffic, and that's a real tragedy.
Portland is a beautiful city historically, but it also needs growth to be a vital, enjoyable place to live. We don't want to do a Disneyland version of the Old Port or the East End. We want to do modern architecture that's energy efficient, that works well for people living there. A good architecture really combines all of those ingredients.
We are in a very good economic cycle right now, and some people think we're close to a peak of it. I'm all about economic growth. It's really important that we have good jobs in the city, that people want to come here, that they can support their families. So how do we preserve the middle class? How do we make sure that the folks who built our city don't get pushed out of our city?
We need to get a handle on, in particular, the kind of egregious 10, 20, 30% rental increases that can happen in a single year that are effectively evictions for a lot of people.
There is a challenge with affordable housing in the city, but there's nothing in this ordinance that creates affordable housing that makes sure that low-income tenants will get affordable housing. There's nothing targeted to the low income here, so it just really doesn't address the problem.
It's always sort of being pegged as corporate interest versus community, but that's disingenuous. The developments of hotels, the developments of larger assets on the waterfront, these are things that contribute revenue to the tax base that pays for education, for instance. If the only solution in the city of Portland is to get more money out of those who are living here, that just increases the cost of living for that mother and father and their family.
Are we displacing people who've always lived or worked on the peninsula? Those are perfectly legitimate questions to ask. That does not mean you should say, oh no, absolutely, we're not going to develop, we're not going to change, we're going to stay exactly the same. If that were the case, we wouldn't have the new life that's been brought into the community by some of the new buildings. That's good. Every generation should add its mark, its stamp on the community.
The lessons that we're learning today are fundamentally, I think, the same as the lessons the generation before us learned and has taught me, and that is to protect and preserve what it is that's great while embracing the change that you need to grow. The people of this city have a very good collective sense of where they want to go and what will be best to preserve what's great.